Hey everyone, this is Roman from Face to Face Games. I'm here with another video today looking at Quick Draft. So the last couple seasons I've been pretty close to hitting Mythic. I've made it to Diamond, I think, each month of the last 4 months. And I'm going to try something different this season and try and push a little earlier in the season. I feel like the last couple seasons, or a few months rather, I've gotten to like Diamond 2 multiple times, and I always end the season with like a day to spare. So this time, I'm going to try something a little different and make the push a little earlier into Diamond. So it is June 3rd, and I got back up to Platinum after resetting back to Gold. Um, and I got actually pretty fast to Diamond last month. Basically, adopting this one strategy of just forcing Silverquill. If you look at my last article, I wrote about how I had 5 or 6 7-win decks in both Quick Draft and Premier Draft, where I basically, some drafts got lucky enough to draft mythics such as Shadrick, Silverquill, but there were other drafts where I opted to pick certain strong Silverquill commons and uncommons the first couple picks, and ended up in some pretty decent Silverquill decks. I've seen a lot of different type of decks from people I've seen on social media. I'm a very big follower of Michael Jacob, aka Darkest Mage on Twitch, who is arguably one of the best limited players of the current generation. And he recently streamed his 2-day climb from Gold to Mythic 108, where he played a myriad of different decks, but the majority of the time he was playing 4 to 5 color decks, which seemed really interesting to me. Adopting this sort of platform of the fixing in Strixhaven is pretty powerful. You have 5 dual lands, or you have 6 dual lands actually with Archway Commons, and a couple other ways to fix your mana with Environmental Sciences, Letter of Acceptance. So Michael Jacob basically was playing these 4 to 5 color decks, and that's something that I want to try on this next run. Going into this draft, however, I want to show you my approach to drafting this format on Quick Draft. Not sure what will open. I am kind of biased, I'll say, with either trying to go Silverquill or maybe into one of these 4 or 5 color decks. But I think that there's still a lot of room to explore in this format. This format isn't just about playing colleges the majority of the time, I feel like. Because there's such good fixing and really powerful multicolored cards overall, and really powerful spells, I think you can find yourself in 3 to 4 color decks more often than not. But at the same time, I think there are some very hyper-aggressive decks, which I talked about in my last article, where you're playing a bunch of 1 drops and 2 drops, and ways to push through damage, where you have a lot of evasive threats. And those decks in Best of 1 can really push through some of the clunkier multicolor decks. So it's an interesting format to be. It's definitely an interesting format. It's really cool to have gone from the start of this draft format thinking that maybe Quandrix was the best school, and I didn't really think very highly of Silverquill. And then after playing Silverquill for like a month, basically, my thoughts changed. And then now watching someone in 2 days go from Gold to Mythic 108 with 4 to 5 color decks, it's just very interesting to me to see how expansive this format really is. But without further ado, let's just jump into this quick draft, and I'm going to walk you through what deck I would build from what we see and my picks. So let's begin. Okay, so Poet's Quill, arguably one of my favorite rares. The lifelink really can push you over the edge if you're an aggro deck against another aggro deck, especially in the Silverquill mirrors. There's a lot of good lifelink synergies, like this card is very good with Blood Researcher. What else do we got? There's an Academic Dispute, which is okay. Ardent Death Speaker is pretty decent. Rip Apart, Comet Professor. But the pick here is definitely just the Poet's Quill. And I'm wondering if we can maybe wheel... I doubt we'll lose Comet Professor or Ardent Dust Speaker, but maybe this Lash of Malice or something. So let's definitely take this Poet's Quill to start off. And now, like, seeing that, I'm a little biased towards Silver Quill, but okay. We have a couple of interesting picks here. So Thunderous Orator is a card that is pretty quintessential for the Silver Quill aggressive decks. Usually in those decks, there's a lot of cards that have Menace and Flying. So this card is usually an evasive threat on 2, which is pretty decent. Also in the pack, there is a Burying Books, which is pretty decent removal. But the card that I'm really excited for is Rite of Exodus. It's a little expensive, but Rite of Exodus is just a really strong way to close out some games. And I've definitely lost a lot of games to this card where my biggest threat is removed. My opponent might do something with my graveyard, but also then they get to get either another threat, maybe in an Inkling Summoning, or they can make their threat on their side bigger with Expanded Anatomy. So I'm going to pick the Rite of Exodus here. But the Thunderous Orator is definitely, I think, a close second. All right. Okay, this is interesting now. So there's a couple pretty interesting picks in this pack. Honor Troll is a good card, but only if you're really in the black-green deck, where you're gaining life with various cards, or you have Blood Researchers. You want your cards to have synergy together. This card's obviously very good with the 0/4 wall that gains a life every time you tap it, that can learn. There is this Comet Professor, which I think is one of the best commons in White, if not the best common. And this card is pretty important, I feel like, to some of the Silver Quill decks, because this card can just win games on its own. It makes combat a lot better for you. So let's see. There's a couple other cards in this pack too that are also decent. Like there's a Cram Session, a Fractal Summoning, which is a really good lesson. Agonizing Remorse is okay as a discard spell, but if you're in Silver Quill, I really like picking up a copy of Humiliate, which I believe is at common. So I usually don't really like picking Agonizing Remorse too early in the draft. I think I'm going to go with the Comet Professor here. It might be this Honor Troll, but I think it's the Professor. Okay, speaking of Humiliate, I think right now I want to stick on the Silver Quill path, because I think to maximize our Poet's Quill, we should be attacking, and to be attacking, we need creatures. So I kind of want to go for like maybe a more creature-focused deck right now. I've kind of made that decision off this Comet Professor too, but we're not like set in stone by any means. So the picks that I'm really thinking about here are Reconstruct History is a card that I think is really, really important to some of those 4 and 5 color decks. It allows you to buy back an instant sorcery pretty much all the time. And then if you're playing cards like Biblioplex Assistant and Letter of Acceptance, you can, it's a draw 3 for 4, which is pretty decent. This card obviously scales as the game goes longer. So it's a card that I'm interested in taking, but potentially we could wheel because it is kind of a very niche card, and I'm not sure that the bots will always pick up on this. The other 2 picks I'm thinking about here are Environmental Sciences, which is really good fixing for playing the 4 to 5 color deck, and there's this Humiliate, which I talked about in the last pack. I think I'm going to stay on the Silver Quill plan. I'm going to see how the bots react, but I'm going to pick this Humiliate. But I could be wrong here, but let's just take this and see how it goes. Okay, so now I'm happy I took this Humiliate because there's this Tenured Incaster. Incaster is one of the cards in the Silver Quill decks that I think is one of the very good like top-end creatures you want. It's really good with cards like Comet Professor because it can push Comet Professor over the edge, maybe if your opponent has any flyers, and putting the counter on your evasive threats is always very powerful. And I feel like in these decks I've always had copies of Essence Infusion, or or other ways to put counters on my creatures. So there are some games where if you have like 2 of these, or if you have multiple creatures with counters on them, you can push through a lot of damage in the late game, which I think is pretty important. So early game, you have evasive threats. Late game, you have some ways to get in with flyers and maybe Tenor Incasters. So other than that, the lesson's pretty powerful. But I'm going to take the Incaster, and let's go off that. Okay, so I think I'm going to lean a little heavier on the Silverquill plan now. And while there is this Reconstruct History, I'm just going to take the Silverquill Pledge Mage out of this pack. There is a pretty decent, like an okay lesson, but I think this 3/1, which is a really great evasive threat. It's straight like this turn 3 into something like a Poet's Skull Equip, or a Humiliate. So let's take this Pledge Mage. I think here it's a toss-up between the Mage Hunter and the Expanded Anatomy. I don't have any lessons yet. And Mage Hunter it's okay. It's not... The great part about Mage Hunter in these Silverquill decks is the incremental damage you get off them casting spells, but I feel like for the most part you're not really attacking with this unless you have a lot of removal in your deck. It's tough. I think I like this Expanded Anatomy a little more, but I'm a little light on creatures. I'll take the Mage Hunter, but I think it's very close, and this pick could be totally wrong. I think here these cards are all pretty medium, so I'll take the Expel. It's not the best in Silverquill because you want to be a deck that's attacking, so you're not really going to find yourself on the back foot too often unless you're losing by a lot. The other pick could be this 1/2 Owl, but I feel like this card's pretty replaceable, so I'll take Expel. I don't know if I'll end up playing it, but we'll see. Now I think I'll take this lesson because I don't really want to splash these red cards just yet. Like, Death Speaker's okay and Dispute's okay, but not in this deck. So I'm going to take this Prophecy in my sideboard, have my first lesson. Okay. I think here I'm going to take this Witherbloom Campus in case I find any good green cards later on. This Cram Session is pretty replaceable, and I'd rather have my 2-drop learn spells be something like Study Breaks. I don't really have any Game Life combos yet, so I think for now I'll just take this land. I don't know if I'm just Silverquill, I'll still play this land just to have a Scarlet in my deck. Yeah, for the same reason I'm probably going to pick this land too. Now, the Reconstruct History, or the Beaming Defiance. I might hedge on this History because Defiance I think is a replaceable effect that we can get back later on. So I'll take this History, and maybe I'll play if I have fixing for it. Let's play this Study. I guess the other one maybe would have wheeled. I'll take this Make Your Mark, though. Another one. Wow. Okay. Out of this pack, this rare, the only things that are really in our color that I want to play are this Closing Statement or Pest Summoning. There's a Guiding Voice, which is decent too, but this Closing Statement, which is premium removal spell, puts counters on our stuff that combos with our Incaster, so we'll take this Closing Statement. Here, I think I'm taking this Silverquill Apprentice, just one of the hallmark 2-drops that I really like in these decks. You can cast spells and give your evasive threats +1/+0. In the pack, there's a 3/3 that I think we can get later on or wheel. There's Introduction to Annihilation, which is a decent lesson, but I think here I'm just going to take the Silverquill Apprentice. Wow. Well, lucky us. One of the best rares, for Silverquill at least. This card is sometimes just very unbeatable. Just 4 mana, we're gonna be able to cast it all the time, playing just black-white, and just gives us insurance for all our creatures. Just one of the very good rares in the set for Silverquill, obviously. Other than that, if this wasn't a card that we could pick, I think I'd be keen on taking this Pledge Mage, decent 5/5, decent body for 5 mana, or this Leech Fanatic. But I'm going to take this Dramatic Finale. Okay. A couple options in this pack, but because we already have one Humiliate, this 3-mana 2/2 is okay, not insane. There is an Essence Infusion, which I like, and I always like playing a copy of, but I think we can maybe get one more. I think the pick is this Inkling Summoning. We have a Poet's Quill right now. Any other ways to learn? In Rite of Exodus, I only have one lesson, and this is the best. Well, not the best lesson, but it is very good in these colors. Obviously, it's a lesson that gives you an evasive threat. It's a great thing to put a counter on with Tenor Incaster, so or pump with Professor. So we're going to take this Inkling Summoning. All right. The only card in this pack that I really want is this Apprentice, and I'm happy to take it. Couple options, okay. What's our spell count right now? We have 6 creatures and 6 spells, and usually in these decks I like to have up to 10 spells. I'm thinking about whether if I should take this Defiance Strike, or if I should take the Spectre of the Fens. I might be able to get another Spectre or wheel this one potentially. Defiance Strike, I could maybe wheel 2. I really like Defiance Strike with Silverquill Pledge Mage though. Okay, I think I'll take this. I actually have not really played with this card yet in this format. And I think that there are other 4-drop creatures that either could replace this card, or maybe we can find another one as a common. I'll try this Defiance Strike. I think here it's between this Beaming Defiance or Essence Infusion. Don't really having good creatures to sacrifice this Plumb the Forbidden. I think I'm just going to take this Essence Infusion. I always like having one of these. And Defiance I don't always play, so. Okay, another hunt. There's a Hunt for Specimens, another Humiliate, or Pilgrim of the Ages. I think at this point, I have decent lessons. I kind of want to take this Pilgrim of the Ages. It's a good blocker with Dramatic Finale out. And I like getting the 6 mana for my Rite of Exodus. I think I'll take the Pilgrim. Okay, here I'll take Guiding Voice. I'm glad I took the Pilgrim now. Yeah, the only card I really wanted in this pack. I could use some more lessons, though, so that's something to keep in mind. Here, I think I'll just take this Shield Mage. I'm not really a multicolor deck at this point because I have Dramatic Finale, so I'm just going to keep the white-black right now, so I'll take this Shield Mage. My spell count's at 9. Will Show of Confidence be my 10th spell, or should I take a Campus? I don't know if I want to have 3 tap lands in this deck. So I think I'll hedge and take the Show of Confidence, even though I might not play it. A lot of spells. I really could use more creatures. Defend the Campus, I think, might be better than the second Infusion. Is that true? I think I'll take the removal spell in this deck. I'm not as low to the ground as other decks I've played. I feel like more of a control-y type deck, more mid-rangey than all the 1s and 2s I've had in previous decks. But we'll see what happens in pack 3. I think it's just this other Rite of Exodus. I mean, this card isn't playable in our deck. This card isn't good in our deck. It's a decent lesson, but I don't think we're going to have any blue mana. And then then Divine Gambit and Expel, we already have effects like that. So I think I'm just taking this Rite of Exodus. Yeah. I just need creatures at this point. Alright, Spectre of Defense came back. There is a really good lesson, but I think I just need creatures. Retriever Phoenix. This has been a really weird draft. I mean, there are some times I felt like we should have been a Mardu deck, a control deck, maybe? Maybe that was what we were supposed to be? Because now I feel like this Silverquill deck is missing a couple things. And I'm wondering if I would have been a better deck if I had leaned in on some of the mid-range, or the kind of control-y cards we saw. I feel like in a control deck, the Rite of Exodus and Expels are a lot better. I'm wondering if I could maybe pivot a little bit, but I think it might be a little too late. I think here, though, I'm going to take this Dusk Mage. I think this Stifle Squad is better than the Dusk Mage, but Dusk Mage is a little better with Guiding Voice, Infusion, and Incaster. And I have a lot of 4s already, so I think I'll take this Dusk Mage here. That's fine. I think I really would like to take one of this 1/1 or this 5/5, but because I have how many learn cards? 1, 2, 3, 4 at least. And I have 2 good lessons. I think I just need a 3rd lesson at this point. Spell count is at 10. I really want this study break, but I have a lot of learn already and not a lot of lessons, so I'll just take the Spiteful Squad. I think I'll just take this lesson. I don't really want this 2-mana 2/1. Don't really want the flyer. Heat Debate's good, but I just don't have enough red mana, I think, playing this card, so I'll take this Introduction to Annihilation. This is a weird deck, actually. It's kind of in the middle of like the deck that I really wanted to be, where I have decent Silver cards, but also I feel like I don't have enough creatures to make this deck super aggressive. So I think in that case, I'm just going to take this Cogwork Archivist. Okay. Arrogant Poet is a card that I think is a huge hallmark of these Silver decks, and I really like Poet with Poet's Quill, so I lose life to give it flying, gain the life back. It's a good target to put counters on, so I'll definitely take this Poet here. I think here I'm just going to take this Divine Gambit, probably not play it. I'll take this Archway Commons. I don't think I'm going to play it, but I'm not taking any of these red cards. I'll take this Heated Debate. I don't think I'm going to play a 2-mana 1/4. Take a Star Pupil, Silver Gold card, Shock, and another card. Okay. So let's do a little post-mortem here and look at my pool. I think this deck turned out okay. It's a little weird because it's sort of in the middle of the road, where part of me wishes that we had been a control deck with like Reconstruct History, but I think when we got past this dramatic finale, it pushed me a little hard into Silverclaw because this card is just so powerful on its own. And I'm wondering if a deck that maybe had more removal spells, like more Heated Debates, more of like a Mardu control deck with like double or triple Reconstruct History would have been better. But I think I'm pretty happy where this deck turned out. I think what this deck is missing, honestly, is just creatures. Right now, our creature count is 13 and 10. It's like kind of what I usually go for, but I'm missing. I really want like another Arrogant Poet or another powerful 2-drop like the Orator that we saw earlier in the draft. I could have used maybe a 1/1 like an Unwilling Ingredient. The reason why I don't really like Star Pupil though, even though I said I need a 1/1, is that Pupil doesn't really have any good evasion. It's not the greatest top deck later on, where cards like Unwilling Ingredient can rebuy itself, or you can get a card when you exile it from your graveyard, and it has Menace. And this card, it's just a 1/1 that puts a counter on something, and that might be okay because we have Poet, Dusk Mage, and Tenured Incaster. The counter could also go on a Spiteful Squad. Okay, so maybe what I'm considering here is cutting this Cogwork Archivist for this Star Pupil. It might be okay, because maybe if I play a Star Pupil and I put a Guiding Voice on it, or I could trade up with a 2-drop with Defiant Strike. I could put the counters on one of my other threats potentially, like my Pledge Mage, my Spectre, Comic Professor, any one of my evasive threats, also my Inkling Summoning. I just feel like my deck is a little bigger than usual. Like my curve is a little higher than usual. I have a lot of 4s and 5s. But maybe that having the Star People around might be better than the Archivist because I have this Dramatic Finale too. Like it might die earlier on, put a counter on something, make a 3/2. I'm willing to try that. Okay, I think this is where I want to be. And like I could play a Star Pupil, maybe equip a Poet Skull to it, get in some damage. It dies, put a counter on something. I think that might be better than playing a 4/5 reach. I'm not really. The Archivist is actually pretty decent in those 4 to 5 color decks because you just churn through your library so much and have such long games that sometimes you just need to. This is a good like stall card. You can like put cards on the bottom of your library, obviously, but it having reach is pretty important against some of the silverpool cards in the format. It's tough. I think this is how I want this deck to go. I have how many learn cards again? I have 1 learn card, 2. 3, 4. How many lessons do I have? 4. Okay. I think this is where I want to be. Yeah, the last thing I'm really deliberating on here, but I probably shouldn't spend too much time on it, is whether I want another creature in Star Pupil, which makes my other creatures a little better, or because my deck has more removal in it, like I have this Expel and these Rite of Exorcisms, maybe I should play more of a better defensive card in Cogwork Archivist. It's a little bigger of a creature, but I think for what I'm going for here, because I have like cards like Poet Squill and I have Arrogant Poet, I have this Tenured Incaster, I have Spiteful Squad. I think the Star Pupil goes, it meshes a little better with those cards overall, and that might trump it being overall, it being a worse card on paper than Cogwork Archivist. All right, so I think that's going to wrap it up. Hopefully this gave you a good look into maybe how to approach this format. I mean, it's not a 2-deck format like I've kind of been saying. Those are just the 2 decks that I've seen, I think, benefit people the most. And the 4 to 5 color decks can also just sometimes be teamer decks or Sultai decks, and maybe they splash a 4th color sometimes. But I think what people have been doing is trying to either maximize the power of their cards overall, because it is a multicolored format, or because it's best of 1, you can just kind of sometimes just get people, right, going 1, 2, and 3. They want to play evasive Silverpool decks. So I think from that draft, what was really interesting was we were presented with a lot of decent Silverpool cards, but overall, I mean, there are cards in this deck that I kind of wish I wasn't playing. Like this Owlin Shield Mages, whatever. This Expel might not be that good in this deck. The Star Pupil is definitely like not the best card. Defiant Strike is okay. You know, I'm wondering, because we saw so many powerful just spells in the draft overall, and I had these Reconstruct Histories early on. I'm curious if we were supposed to be more of like a Mardu control deck, because there were a lot of lessons and learn cards. There was that Retriever Phoenix that we saw. We saw multiple Heat debates in that draft, and Pigment Storms, I think. So it's interesting. So hopefully this draft goes well. I implore you, if you're trying to rank up right now in Strixhaven, to play Quick Draft, because they're just so fast and they're cheap, which I like also. But I think there are ways to maybe abuse the AI a little bit, because I think, you know, our Silverpool deck here is fine. It's not the best, but I think it's with the rares and some of the other good commons and uncommons, it's decent enough. And we could have been we could have been a Martyr deck that maybe was a lot better, or around the same power level. So, and you know, we also wield these Reconstruct Histories, which I don't know if you're going to do in Premier Draft, but maybe people in general aren't high on these sort of strategies. They like kind of going with the 2-color college decks. So maybe you would have gotten 2 or 3 of these in a normal draft too, but who knows. So, all right, I'm going to close out here. Thank you all for watching, and if you have any questions about the format, message me on Twitter at Roman_Fusco. Thanks for watching, everyone.